Welcome to the show, Mandie.
Thank you once again for having me. It wasn't that long ago when I saw you when you had blonde hair. You seemed to switch it up again.
Yep, that was the summertime look. I like to go blonde in the summer.
Gotcha, gotcha.
And now it's
Pumpkin
back to the
patch.
fall, so it's back to the just brown hair it is. There's
Gotcha.
still a little bit of blonde.
Well, I see that you got that like Guy Ferrero look going on.
Yeah, unfortunately. Not that bad. It's not that bad. Because I don't want to look like that, that's for sure. I need
I
to
know,
get my hair
right?
cut again. Um so where did you grow up, Mandie?
I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania called Stallstown. I was born and raised in Westmoreland County. I was born at Latrobe, PA. Uh, Coincidentally enough, it's the rally where Trump was just at last night. Yep, but I'm pretty much a small town girl. Like I said, my story has been very unique. I suffer from a disorder called dissociated identity disorder. A little bit of background on my disorder is a lot of people used to call it multiple personality disorder. Now, the mind is supposed to be the strongest between the ages of 0 to 6. That's when you're supposed to be able to mold into things, and that's when you're the most impressionable. When you're when your physical being ends up going through an extreme amount of trauma, often your mind's way of handling it is to create protectors, is what
Bury it.
other people call them. For me, they're my altars. I have pretty much about 40 different altars that I know of. Um, and this all started off because, like for those of you that didn't catch my story from previous, I was severely abused all my life. The first time I experienced sexual abuse was whenever I was 2 years old. And it
2 years
was,
old. 2 years
yes,
old.
at
So
2 years old.
growing up in a small town, who was it at 2 years old that abused you?
My mom was literally 14 years old when she had me. So basically, at age 16, she went to work and they had left me with the neighbors. And the neighbor's son actually had a band. It was him and four other members of the band.
Wait, hold on. You got low. Yeah, you're holding it over this
Oh,
mic.
sorry. Am I better now?
Yep. So
Okay.
your neighbor's son.
My neighbor's son and his four friends, yes. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, they took a broomstick and sodomized me. I was literally not even 3 years old yet. So, at that early of an age, innocence was already lost. Later on in life, when at about the age of 11 and everything, the the first like initial symptoms of the disassociated identity presented itself because I felt really neglected and abandoned. My self-esteem had taken a really bad turn for the worse. And if it didn't get any worse from there, after I was sexually assaulted, my mother, like, because she had also been sexually assaulted, and you already know, coming from a small town, when you're sexually assaulted, because of the fact that there's only so many people that live up there, people hear the rumors about it and everything, but it's often the victim's fault instead
Yeah.
of, instead of the perpetrator. It's like they used to convince me literally that it was my fault that the five boys raped me. I used to think that, maybe I was walking around with a onesie on and my diaper was loose. I used to have severe like mental blockage because of this. So
So let's backtrack. Your mom, she had you at 14. Was she sexually assaulted and got pregnant?
she was sexually assaulted multiple times, except for the fact that it led more towards promiscuity for my mom. My mom thought that I would be the perfect answer and the perfect way out because she was going through whatever she was going through at her house. And she thought that if she had a child of her own and a family of her own, that would make her life perfect. And then she ends up stepping off into this nightmare instead of a fairy tale. You know, there was there was so much surrounding my life. I was lied to for so long. Like, I grew up thinking that my stepfather was my real father. So that impacted a lot of abandonment issues because
That
of
was my next question is did your father stick around after your mom got pregnant at 14 or 13?
see, my dad really was never really in the picture from what I understand. It was kind of like small town once again. My father's cousin was sleeping with my aunts, and my father, I guess, came over to meet my mom, and whatever happened happened on the porch. And I guess how do you put it? The best half of me, I guess, ran down mom's leg.
How old was your dad?
My dad, I believe, was uh, let's see, that is now, oh gosh, I'll be 45. So he's 20 years older than me. My dad would have been 19 going on 20.
And with a 13-year-old at that.
Yeah. See, a lot of people never really understood the age of my mom because my mom always pretended to be older. And I like my hometown, seriously. Like, I grew up listening to the best oral that I ever got was from my aunt, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like, this is the type of mentality that we live in these days. And it's a shame because, like, now I'm very, very strong advocate for survivors of sexual assault. You know, I speak out about it because for every story that goes untold, like, no matter what people tell you, you know, silence is golden. You have the potential to protect 150 other people. Like, literally, I
I firmly believe that our secrets keep us sick.
yes, they do, very much so. That's pretty much the conclusion that you come to with dissociative identity disorder, because I've came to learn how to try to manage all of my alters together. So therefore, I do like a lot of different projects. Like, you see, I do outreach. I'm constantly online. I work for a tow truck company. You know, I'm very proactive within my community. I write memoirs. I write stories about people, and I also do a lot of like trauma therapy bonding. You know, with the current situation with, I don't know if you're familiar with the Past Yesterday song that just came out. It's by Jelly Roll, and he's very, you know, he's very popular with the mental health and the struggle, and is very a very strong advocate and a voice for our community. Well, Past Yesterday is basically turning out to be an anthem for sexual abuse survivors everywhere. Sorry.
I'll have to check it out.
It's a very powerful ballad. It talks about how you know, we trust so many people with our children. And we want to trust people, but it's like you said, we're only as dark as our deepest secrets. Um, and I speak out mostly because I work with a lot of children that are, that are going through sexual abuse. And it's like their family doesn't want them to discuss it with outsiders because they don't want to deal with the person that's in the family that's sick. Okay. Um,
Did it happen multiple times for you, or is it just that one time?
no, multiple times all throughout my life. I
The same
was
person?
not by multiple people, and one of them was the same person. Yes, I was literally. I think that if I could stare and put a number on the amount of times that I remember being raped, there was about 60 different perpetrators
From the ages of 2 to when?
from the ages of 2 up until the time that I was 35. Yeah,
And how old are you now?
I'm now 44.
Oh wow. Okay, so you've had 9 years.
Uh,
I feel like I had somebody on before, and he had two different stepdads sexually assault him. And between the ages of 5 and 9, he had two different stepdads that did that. And he was like, I don't know if I had like a fucking sign on my head saying rape me.
and then that's my next point that I was gonna get to. I always felt like, because we talked about, not only am I a sex trafficking survivor, but I also was a sex worker. I thought that, that was the only thing that I had to offer. It was like, I thought that I had come, bump me written all over my forehead. I felt like I had a scarlet S all over my body. It was like everybody that I ever got around, the only thing that I had to offer them was my body. The first time that I was considered putting up a wife role and a wife duty, I was 12 years old. You know, I got to come home and ride a four-wheeler for about an hour and a half and hang out with normal kids, and then come home and put on lingerie, only to be drugged and like laid out on a couch and have multiple people taking turns just violating me and treating me like I was a piece of meat. And I dealt with this all of my life. And then I didn't have family because, my mom, I gave her an ultimatum because I couldn't watch her continue to be hit. And I also couldn't deal with the concept of, her constantly putting me in danger. So basically, my mom like wanted nothing to do with me. She was supposed to, do 6 hours worth of classes for the state of Pennsylvania. And that brings me to another point because we're hearing more and more about how the CPS system is being outed and investigated for their role in sex trafficking and child trafficking. Um, these are all not allegations, these are all true. Uh, Basically, I went through 40 different foster homes in a matter of 2 months as respite homes. And within about six of the placements that I was at, there was only two where I wasn't removed because of the fact that there wasn't some type of, groping or something going on within the foster family. And it's like, for these types of things, for me, like, I went through so much hell, and it's like, you know how they say about the phoenix, you have to stare, you have to walk straight into the fire and get completely burned to
Yep.
expose your inner skeleton. If I didn't end up with my disorder, I would be a casualty. I would be a statistic of my addiction. Um, Basically, with altars, I believe that like it's kind of like a cat. Okay, we have a certain, even though it's considered disability, we have the ability to die off piece by piece. And as weird as this sounds, whenever I would stare and my altars would come together, the last time that my altar, like, one of them integrated within each other because they felt that they weren't needed anymore, literally, I felt like I died. Like a piece of me slowly just disintegrates inside, and you can feel like a light's gone. And I've came to the conclusion that I've probably lived out about 8 lives right now. So I'm like working on my last one. So I've got to start to do the best that I can with it.
No, I know what you mean. Have cats? Cats do have multiple personalities.
Yep, yep.
They, dogs. You know what to expect from them,
Oh
but
yeah.
cats. We have two cats, and they are each their own person,
Oh yeah.
and they both have their brother and sister, and they both have different personalities that come up depending on the time of the day or the situation. Um,
Exactly. And they
and
don't play.
it's so funny how you described it because I totally get that. I'm trying to rescue a third cat. I live in an apartment complex, and there's one outside. When I go outside to smoke a cigarette, and I feel bad because I can't feed it because I don't have like a door to the outside.
Gotcha.
So yesterday it let me pick it up and hold it. And I said to my wife, I said, if he lets me pick him up again, I'm bringing him inside and we'll quarantine him in my office until we can get him to the vet. And finally she said yes. So I've been smoking more cigarettes just so I can be outside to try to catch that damn thing.
I know, right? It's like, honey,
Yep.
I swear, I'm just looking for the.
She knows what I'm doing. She knows exactly
Oh
what.
yeah, exactly. We're very hip to. We're very privy to it. See, it's funny that you say that because out in my backyard, my best friend, she calls me Snow White because a lot with my personality disorder, I associate with animals more. So it's like she says that I'm an animal whisperer because I'll be sitting out in my backyard, and I'll be smoking. And the next thing I know, I'll hear my cardinals behind me. And like, we're not talking like behind you, like back in the yard next door. I'm like talking like Lily sitting on the stoop, waiting for me to throw it some cat food. And Lily, if I'm not like outside for like a day, it will come and sit on my windowsill and be loud as hell until I go outside to give it some cat food. We got raccoons, we got deer in the backyard,
I want a
bamboo.
raccoon pet so bad.
Oh
I
my god,
want one so bad, Mandy.
so cute.
I
Yes,
know, and my wife keeps reminding me we have to childproof the house and all this stuff and how ornery they are. And in Pennsylvania, you can legally own them as a pet.
I know, I know. I had one called Bandit, and he literally lived up to his name.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so cute, and they're like cats. They're
Oh
like
yes,
they're like
they're
they can be
so
litter trained,
it,
and all that stuff. And they're so smart. And it's like a mixture of a dog and a cat.
it really is because the fact that you get that, like, you don't get the cat attitude, but you get the protector and all that stuff in it. Yeah. See, it's funny because Pennsylvania, like I told you, I grew up in PA. We had talked about that before, but
Yeah, I live out in Bloomsburg, where like the Bloomsburg Fair is. Now, have you ever been to the Bloomsburg Fair because you did carnivals and stuff like that?
no, see, believe it or not, the funny part is whenever I worked with Wright Hoffer, I only went to from Maryland to Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I was like 8 months pregnant, remember?
Yeah, well, let's refresh our memory. It's a new show, so
Yep,
new
I
audience.
was yep, I was 8 months pregnant whenever I ran off, and I thought that the carnival clown was my solution to my problems.
How old were you when you got pregnant?
Uh, Whenever I got pregnant, I was 19.
Now, was that consensual?
Actually, that was looking back on it, like, I really am not sure if when exactly my consensual times was. I think that was more so out of that thought of you're here now, you might as well just do it. Like I have a very rare outlook on my trauma and how I associate my sex life with it because it did affect it a lot. Like a lot of times it wasn't me that was there. You know what I mean? It wasn't me that was present. One of my alters would take over because of the fact that, with it being such a traumatic thing, I married my daughter's father. Because three of my children have the same father. Um, but looking back on it, I really don't think that I've really had a normal sexual encounter where it was completely consensual with everybody. So it's hard. And it's hard because a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, well, you used to be a prostitute. So how can you stand and say that, it wasn't consensual? Well, basically, if you have 40 different people that are all hanging out in a room, right? And two of them are sluts, but the other 38 are like nuns. The other 38 are going to be completely classified by the two that are there in the room. No. So obviously there's a very thin line that I associate with that. Um my
Well,
now
how
my
old were you when you got into sex work?
25.
Okay, so you were of age when you got into that.
Yes,
Is
yes,
that
yes.
when you were trafficked?
That was when I was trafficked, yeah. That was whenever I had, left my husband for good, and I had ended up moving into a house where, there was a pimp that lived downstairs.
Where did your kids go?
My kids have always lived with either their father or, you know, my oldest daughter has always been with her dad mostly. My youngest daughter has been with my sister-in-law since she was about like 2 days old. Um, my son, who is 21, lives in Pennsylvania, and my oldest daughter lives in Montana, and my youngest son, who has a different father from everybody, lives in Axton, Virginia. They've pretty much Three of my kids were traumatically ripped away from me. Um, After 9/11 happened, that's when my split came out really, really bad. And for those of you that are trying to quit smoking, I'm about to do something really bad. I don't normally smoke on podcasts, at least I try not to, but
You
this
can.
this subject is a little bit, unsettling.
If I could smoke indoors, I would smoke one with you, Mandie.
I always hate focusing on this topic because this is going to bring me to the next subject. I never really talked about my kids because everybody has their own little opinions on why my kids got taken away. And you know how people can be judgmental and ignorant, be like, well, you were a prostitute, you had nothing going for you, you had no family, you had nothing. Your kids were better off without you. Um, I just want to say thank you, Captain Obvious. You're a genius. I don't deal with that guilt and that shame every day. So I just want to stare and I want to advise you and have a nice day. And the next time that you want to stare and judge somebody like me, um, I guarantee you, if you walk a mile in my shoes, your ass would be quoting pretty damn different. And you'd probably feel the same way that I feel. Because it's hard enough for me to deal with my life on a daily basis without having to worry about kissing your ass in order to comply.
Yep, and you say that with a smile at the end. I like that.
Exactly, because I'm a graceful bitch.
So you moved to Maryland when you were like 25 after you got divorced from your first husband.
No, believe it or not, I aged out of foster care and I moved to Maryland when I was 19. I was married to my husband pretty much. I needed a family. I never had that. You know what I mean? Uh, I, I I finally had somebody that wanted to give me their name, and I had a social security card. I saw a family that was struggling. Yeah, you know that Taylor Swift song, "Hey, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm part of the problem. It's me. But basically, I decided that I wanted to, do something to give back to someone. And that's like always been the kind of person that I was, which has always made it hard because in reality, all I longed for was just somebody to love me. And I went about it in all the wrong ways. And if I could go back and change that, um, would I do things differently? We've talked about this before. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be the strong person that I am, and I wouldn't have been able to impact as many people as I do with sharing my story. It's not easy to be able to sit and talk about how hard it is to, get up on a daily basis just to do normal functions. Like for me, with the days of my depression and my anxiety, it takes everything just for me to move out of my bedroom. Like, literally, whenever I wake up, I'm in so much pain because of my night terrors that I still have. And I've seen a lot of people that ask if during sobriety, if our nightmares or our urges or our cravings get any easier. No, the night terrors probably get worse the more conscious you become of it, especially if you're not dealing with the dual diagnosis part of our addiction. Um, that could be a trigger for a relapse, just to let everybody know. And also with the like the dreams, the urges to use and stuff like that. No, because with the night terrors are generally affiliated with the traumas that came along with actions of what we were using. So subconsciously, your body teleports itself back into that situation. So the dopamine levels and everything act as an enhancement. And yes, that mental craving that everybody there says, "Oh, it's just in your head." Yeah, it's just in your head, but while you're sleeping, it's very much a conscientious reality, and your body literally is getting that mental and physical reaction without getting the chemical aspect of it.
Now, can we talk a little bit about the sex trafficking, how that worked?
Sex trafficking. Okay, well, basically, I was 11 years old, and my mom ended up throwing me out. Um, Ended up going to Florida to live with a couple that was supposed to be my guardians. I got raped while I was down there, and then my quote unquote mom told me that the first time it hurt, but I should get used to it because each time after that it tickled. So I would be transported between Florida and Pennsylvania through truck stops. And I was literally being abused by a 90-year-old man, his son, and his son had a group of people that would come over, and I would be laid out on a couch at the age of 12, and they would be taking turns raping me. We're talking women, we're talking men, people of all ages. Like I said, I used to start and have this 80-year-old man who would take me to the flea market every Saturday and Sunday just to buy me like the shortest Daisy Dukes. And the response he would get would be he would completely and maliciously violate me with his hands because at this point he could no longer, you know, get anything going. But he would literally make me so sore that I wouldn't be able to walk into school the next morning. This went on for about 6 months. My mom came down and realized that something was wrong, and the guy that was my quote unquote husband ended up beating my mother up and damn fireproof cigarettes. He ended up beating my mom. And whenever they took me up to Pennsylvania, because we were dropping my mom back off, because, like, of course, she had came down to visit. He had told me he wanted me to spend a little bit of time with my mom because it would be a little bit of time before we were coming back up. And within 2 days, we had found out he had taken my stepsister down to Florida with him, and that I was no longer going to be anything. Um, my mom then put me into foster care within a year. And during this time prior to that, I was living with, my stepdad's brother. And it turned out later on that I had remembered, I had recalled that he was also a perpetrator. So, like, basically, I have been around all of my captors, all of my life. And then whenever I went into the foster care system, that's whenever everything it seemed like you had said with your friend saying he thought that he had to sign on him. I really thought that I was just meant to be a tool for people to take their turn on.
Was
And
school even in the picture at this point? Because the traveling all around, being in
yeah,
different places, it's
yeah.
hard to have any kind of school life and stability.
I didn't have any stability, but I did have a school life. I was actually very athletic. I was I actually excelled. Did very great at gymnastics. I tried to be a cheerleader. And ironic that you mentioned that. That's one of the weirdest memories that I have. When I was down in Florida, whenever I was, having, I guess you could say, a normal period when the mother was around and I didn't have to be the wife. I was in a talent show and I danced. Coincidentally enough, imagine 12-year-old running around as a stripper. That was me. I'm the problem.
Now, when
I
did you
was
start smoking cigarettes?
oh god, at the age of 8, I've
So
been
that's
smoking.
your first addiction?
I think drama was my first addiction, no lie. Like, either, I I I I I love other people's drama. So I've always been a nosy person. So I would say that that has always been my biggest addiction, 'cause I'm very nosy. So that would be my first addiction, but if I could really say my first addiction would have had to have been alcohol.
How old were you when you started drinking?
7.
7? You beat me by 4 years.
Yeah, I used to start because my grandfather, like, whenever we would have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and everything, my grandfather was a very severe alcoholic. So there was always constantly bar full and stocked and loaded. So when he would start get busy and all the adults would keep him occupied and try to get the gun from him and chasing around grandma, us kids would be getting sloshed underneath the bar and I'd play bartender. I was pretty good at it until I got caught. That was pretty much we were 3 sheets into the wind and they had just gotten done getting the shotgun off Pap and we were all outside puking. But by that time, you couldn't feel the beatings. I mean, Jack and Jim, they were your friends at that time.
Yeah. And I'm sure, you were self-medicating too with everything that was going on.
Believe it or not, no, I didn't start doing drugs until I was 22.
So you just drank until you were 22?
Pretty much, yeah, and smoked weed.
And what did you start doing at 22?
Blow.
Who introduced you to that?
Let me see. I think it was. I'm gonna have to say it was Cody. It would have been Bridget. Yeah, it was one of my stripper friends. She's there. She's like, hey. She's like, you look like you could use a pick me up. And I'm like, what? She's like, go and guess. And I'm like, and she's like, okay, that didn't work out as good as expected. Because apparently, like, I had just like nothing but like a big powder ring, and I looked like, those are the clown. And I'm like, she's like, do you feel it? And I'm like, You do realize I have sinus problems, right? She's like, oh, okay, I got you. So she sits here and takes and sprays Afrin up my nose. And it's like sits there and like don't even say anything to me, just like tilts my chin back and then takes a paper towel and puts it up against my nose and like lets like the drip go down. I went out on stage and I don't even remember anything about the rest of the night because it flew by so quick. So pretty much that was the first time that I ever felt normal. And for me, that was normal because of the fact that with my disassociated and everything being left untreated with my mental health and with all the different disorders that I was on and with health issues, I was supposed to be on, balancers and all this stuff. So Coke literally acted as a balancer. But with my sinuses, it was hell because it was hit or miss on whether it would work. Or when it would come into play. It would come into play at the most inopportune times. And I was one of those, you can't tell when I'm high. I was just that weekend warrior and I wasn't, I didn't have a problem. I was only doing it every day whenever I was awake. Okay. Meanwhile, um, I'm awake working 3 jobs a week, you know. Literally, I would sleep, like, about 14 hours a week. So, I guess I did looking back on it, I might have had a little bit of a problem with it. I might have invested poorly. My 401k plan kind of expired with it. Kind of rethinking these things now, looking back on it, yeah. I probably should have invested that money somewhere else because baking powder's not really making a comeback.
Nope. So, how old were you when you started stripping then?
I was 22.
And that's when you were still married?
Yeah. I he had beat the shit out of me, like literally. Uh, it was really bad. He was cheating on me. I had gotten an STD with my first daughter. My second daughter, he had gotten into a car accident with us, and it seemed like he was just not happy with me. I wasn't happy with him. Um, then we got into it one day. His father, God rest his father's soul, had a problem with being handsy to me too. So when I say that I felt like I had a sign on my head, that the only thing I was worth to it was being a piece of meat. My father-in-law literally would back me in the corner and try to violate me all the time. Um, he came in one day and he saw me and I had his dad backed up against the corner and I finally had enough. And I had a knife in my hand and I told his dad, I said, if you touch me or if you touch any of my children, I don't want you around me or my kids. The next time that you grab my ass will be the last time you grab anything because I will slit your wrists and make it look like you did it yourself. And my husband came in, he saw me standing there threatening his dad. "Mm, you're not saying you don't have to tell her twice." He black and blue both my eyes. So I only had to tell him once. I picked up a cast iron skillet and I hit him in the back of the head with it. I went to jail that night. Not
Well,
him, me.
yeah.
Yeah.
because you were the one that swung the weapon.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you had black and blue eyes.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. I still have, on my record, domestic assault charges. And like, it's like, what's your badge of honor right there? Okay.
Now, would you chalk that up to one of your personalities protecting you?
I know it was. I know it was Leah. Leah was my gang personality. I told you that I was also in gangs. You know,
Oh no, I don't know. So
I've been affiliated with a very popular Spanish gang back whenever I was growing up. I don't associate with them anymore. I try to avoid it because honestly, you hear about them too much in the news with, the 13 associated with them and just all of the sex trafficking, all of the cartel and the coyotes and shit like that. I'm very hip to all of that stuff. Like I said, I live right here in DC. Um, I had family that had ties. I don't know if you remember back in Houston when they found that trailer full of those people from across the border that were left abandoned. It was one of my in-laws' brothers that brought those people over here and left them to die. I mean, like I have been around so much dangerous stuff, and I also have affiliations with what's currently going on with the celebrity, uh, you know, trials that are going on right now. I have a lot of firsthand knowledge and some things that are about to come into light, hopefully, if they ever do come into light. But these are all things that we don't talk about because it's like as victims and as survivors, we have to try and maintain a low profile because you know how you say you're only as sick as your secrets. We're only as sick as our secrets, but sometimes we survive in keeping some of those secrets. Um, because one of the big names that are being thrown around out there right now, that what was the former president prior to Barack, and his quote unquote affiliation with the Diddy parties and that, I can stare and I can assure you, as real as I am, that the whole scenario of Epstein didn't kill himself situation because he mentioned a certain group of names. They are most certainly involved in the trafficking industry. And it's some of the most government elite officials that you'd never believe. And they use these rallies in order to lure these kids to them. And then they start and they can hand pick out people. They can go around and, find the most vulnerable children to stare and exploit. And me, I was always an easy scapegoat because who's going to stare and believe that more people were, the problem? Isn't it easier for you to start and think that it's more suspect that I'm having all these people do this to me, that I'm the manipulator in the situation, rather than think that these people are sick?
yeah,
So it always becomes a deflection, this is another point. If you have any type of feeling that somebody around you is being sexually abused, please reach out to them and talk to them. It's hard enough to start and share this burden, but knowing the fact that 98% of these cases go unpunished, okay? And whenever they do get punished, you get a slap on the wrist. My punishment for speaking out about my sexual abuse, I had to start and go through counseling for 5 years. And it was a court ordered mandated class that was from 5 to 6. And guess who came afterwards in the same place? It was the court ordered pedophiles from 6 to 8. So you tell me how much sense that makes.
Yeah.
This
Well,
world. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I had a question that it's a little off topic, but it popped in my head. You mentioned Leah is your gang, alter. Do you have names for all 40?
Well, not all of them have names. You have my main ones. There's like 5 ones. You have Manders, which is myself. Basically, she's in control of everything. You have Ruby, who is my innocence. Um, Basically, Ruby is teetering on, in and out of play because of the fact that Ruby tried transitioning. She thought that she was no longer needed, but something traumatic happened that she realized that she wasn't done yet. You've got Leah, you've got Amanda, who Amanda is the intelligent one, and then you have Sparkles. Sparkles basically was the party girl. Sparkles was the one that just basically she just IDGAF, at all. Anything. She was down for anything. She didn't care what people thought about her.
That's your party one.
Yep. Thank God she see Sparkles developed a bad fate. And you're gonna laugh your ass off about this because this is funny. Sparkles had a half a gallon of vodka and she was chilling up on the second story balcony. And, well, needless to say, Sparkles didn't spill her vodka, but Sparkles pretty much damn near broke her neck that day. And Lily, that's the day that Sparkles died because I think that I knocked the shit out of myself when I fell off the balcony.
So that's one of your 8 lives right there is falling off.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think that was 2 because of the fact that I wasn't wearing any underwear and I was wearing a skirt and the paramedics needed to come. So pretty much, embarrassment and dying from embarrassment and dying from, falling off the balcony. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we can wrap that up with 2 as in 1.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I
But
appreciate you coming on here, Manders, and being so open about, your story. It's not an easy one to relive. And I hope it gets easier the more you talk about it and the more you bring it up.
and honestly, it doesn't get easier. Um, it it's more difficult, but it's more of a necessity because of the fact that so many people are so afraid that no one's going to believe them or that they're going to be punished and they're going to be taken away. There are people out there who care, are going to listen, they're going to help you. But there's one thing that I do ask people to understand. When you accuse somebody or you lie about sex abuse, you do not realize the trauma that it inflicts on survivors. You make a mockery of me and everything that I ever had to go through. My scars and my trauma and my story is very much real. My story is a part of my legacy. I don't appreciate when people make fun of my legacy. And if you haven't noticed by now, I like to travel and I like to educate people. So I really wouldn't pick my story to poke at because you never know when you're going to poke an angry beast.
You're not wrong about that. And we didn't talk about a lot of this on the addiction podcast because this is more of a podcast about trauma.
Yeah.
And it's a deeper dive into what we discussed. On the addiction one, we covered more addiction than trauma. You did mention some trauma, but we didn't dive into it.
Yeah.
Get into the weeds.
Yeah.
So
And we really just basically touched the roots of it. And I appreciate the fact that, that you're such a progressive podcast. Like I said, I love working with you. And um afterwards, when we get done, I do want to let you know that I have a certificate of recognition for you. I do renegades here. I started called the Renegade Ambassador Project. I'm going to be sending out personal certificates of appreciation to the people that I see that are advocates out here literally making a difference.
I'll send you. Yeah, I'll give you my address.
I definitely want to say, on behalf of all of us here in DC and all of the affiliations that I work with, we'd like to say thank you for what you do and the time that you take to educate and bring awareness to all the topics that most people don't want to get into.
I appreciate that. I don't make any money from my podcasts. They're all
Exactly. It's all, trust me, I know.
it's all
Yeah.
ad free, and there's no money to be made. And I'm not my family doesn't even watch my shows because they can't handle the topics that we dive into.
Oh, yeah.
My mom especially, she's like, I love what you do, but I can't watch it. And
No,
I say, that's fine, Mom. It's not for everybody.
exactly. Like I say, a lot of people don't understand when we start and we advocate and we're doing this and this service work. Everybody's like, oh, all they're doing is monetizing off of our stories and our situations. No, the ones that are, and the ones that aren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like there's very few podcasts that I will actually continue to go on. You and Nikki are so far the only two that I've been consistent, you know, with.
Yeah.
Like
And this
I
show is a therapy session, so you can come back again too and dive into more topics. So
well,
we're never
definitely,
done with therapy. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today.
thank you very much for having me, JD. It's a blessing, and make sure you string and tell that beautiful wife of yours that I said hello.
I will. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye bye,
Bye.
buddy.